Good morning, everyone. I apologize for the delay. I had to confer with my other half. Before we begin, if you could please rise and join me to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. With that, we're going to begin our subcommittee work on the bail bills, HB 38, HB 318, HB 653, Senate Bill number 252, and Senate Bill number 249. For the purposes for the committee, I'd like to lay out what my thoughts are and what I've discussed with Representative Harriet Gathright on how the framework of this is going to go going forward. Over the next 3 to 4 weeks, we're going to meet twice a week, and we're going to go over a series of issues that we're going to incorporate into each of these bills, which will cause a considerable rewrite of most of them. However, we will be incorporating most of the issues in these bills, probably just in different ways. So the first issue we're going to go over, not today, but these are the issues we'll be dealing with, is we're going to be looking at appropriating money, and I'll be inviting finance that day that we talk about it, to totally revamp and update the IT system for the criminal justice court system in the state of New Hampshire. It's 2023, and the majority of our court system functions like it's in the early 2000s, maybe earlier. They're heavily paper-driven. There's huge disconnects between the different courts, between the courts and probation, parole, police. And in this day and age, we should be able to have real-time information when a warrant is entered or when a warrant is canceled, bail is issued, bail's rescinded, conditions of bail. This should all be available instantly to the law enforcement across the state. So I've invited several companies that have done this in other states. They're going to come and give us a presentation. It's not our role to decide which company does what or who is hired to do what. It's our job to talk about the policy, and we'll pass it to finance to appropriate, and the courts will decide who they want to deal with. The purpose of having them come is so that we have an understanding of what they can provide versus where we are now, so we have a firm understanding of what we're dealing with. So that's going to be one of the issues. The next issue, and probably one of the most important we're going to deal with, is how the bail commissioners are paid, or more appropriately, how they're not paid. We've heard testimony over years that they're getting paid somewhere between 40 and 50, and I would defer to my colleague about how often they get actually paid for the work they do. Part of our work is going to be ensure that these folks are paid. These folks get up in the middle of the night. They drive sometimes many miles to go bail someone out. That's a service, not a right, and they don't get paid for it many, many times. And it's fundamentally unfair, and it's just simply wrong. So one of our jobs on this committee, during this subcommittee, is going to be to figure out a way to ensure that our bail commissioners are paid. Right now, we are very depleted, the numbers of bail commissioners, and if they all decided to walk off job tomorrow, we'd be in big trouble. So we need to fix that, and we need to buttress that so that it is something people want to do. Right now, I can't imagine anyone wanting to do that in light of the fact that they don't even get reimbursed. The next issue that we'll be talking about is what crimes, if a list of crimes that can or cannot be bailed by a bail commissioner that have to be held for a judge. And as part of that, we're going to discuss, and we're going to work with the courts to see about getting judges to be able to work on the weekends. So we have on-call judges, so there's no reason for anyone to sit in jail longer than necessary to be heard and either released or held. Currently, we don't have that. There's certain issues behind that we're going to have to work through. For example, a judge is able to do hearings from home, but a clerk is required to either open the court or and somehow be able there to take notes or minutes or in recordings of what happens. So we're going to work with the courts to figure out what that needs, if it requires another position, because the clerks and the folks at the court are part of a union, so it's a collective bargaining issue. So we're going to look at that. We're going to hear from the courts about that, and we're going to work on figuring out a way to do that. I've spoken with one of the representatives from the courts. It's doable. As always, though, it comes down to money. It's my opinion that right now we have some excess one-time money to spend. We can't encumber a future legislature. It's not a budget, but we can fund things up until the next budget when the courts would have to take it over themselves. So we're going to look at that. And again, I'll be including finance in that. And those are the main issues that we're going to deal with. At this point, I'm happy to hear from any of the committee that would like to discuss what their thoughts are on those, and if they have certain other issues they'd like to discuss. Representative Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for explaining that very well. And I agree with everything that you said, for the record. And one of the things that I really think that we need to focus on is violation of bail that has anything to do with a restraining order, domestic violence, or anything that had any harm, especially sexual harm with a child. So as long as we can get that in there, pretty much on board.
Thank you. And to clarify, when I said bail release, that's not only a list of crimes, that's also things that we are going to discuss whether or not people should be held over to talk to the judge, such as excessive failures to appear. This committee went on a field trip, and I believe all of us saw the number of people that would be called, and they were defaulted. They just didn't show up, and they had other defaults. So we're going to talk about people that have trouble finding their way to the court for their appearances. That's a burden on the system. It wastes time, it wastes money, and it inhibits the ability of justice to be carried out. Also, in regard to that, there will be other issues we discuss, whether someone should be bailed for violating a restraining order. That's not necessarily a new crime that's being discussed, but it's something that hasn't been brought up in any of the bills. I believe a violation of a protective order in and of itself screams dangerous. So we'll be discussing that as well. Representative Harry Gathright, would you like to speak at all to these?
Yes, I agree 100% with what you're presenting. And after having conversations with others that feel the same way, I think it's great. My main concern was holding people, and they haven't been proven to be guilty of any crime, actually, so that is a concern, but I know that violent offenders definitely would be held, but that's always already in the record, so.
Correct. I think that we need to focus on, first, we're going to start with the presumption that everyone is innocent until proven guilty. And then we work on each person presents an individual situation to the courts and to the justice system. So throwing out a blanket, you all will be held, is first of all, it's not in keeping with the Constitution. And second of all, it causes expense, it causes strain on the system. But at the same time, we recognize the sacrifices and the stress this puts on law enforcement to arrest people and see them walking out the door before they can even finish their police report, only to pick them up a day or two later. But this goes back to my first point on IT. As I pointed out earlier, right now you can be arrested in Manchester on a serious crime, bailed out, and picked up in another part of the state a day later, bailed out again, and we scream, well, why are they letting them out again? They're already on bail. Well, there's a very good chance the person who made that decision has no idea that that person was out on bail. We heard from police officers who said oftentimes they only found someone's on bail when they searched their car and found a bail slip crumbled up on the floorboard of the car. And I don't think that that's any way for a criminal justice system to operate. I'd like to hear from Representative Sytek if you have anything to say regarding this or the bail commissioners.
The issues brought up are excellent, especially the IT. I mean, that the police and I look at each other and say, is this guy on bail? I think he's bail Manchester. I heard that's a wonderful, wonderful direction. I want to point out a side comment, not related to this, but you might find it interesting. I am a justice of the peace. I am sworn before other justices when I am renewed in order to marry people. I am not sworn to incarcerate people or keep them incarcerated. Isn't that a little strange? I mentioned briefly to Representative Gathright that one of the things that that I think needs to be done that's ancillary to this, not to, I'm not going to enlarge on what you've said, it's wonderful, is training for bail commissioners. I took it seriously. I've trained 2 other bail commissioners. It took hours. I'm telling you, it honest. And there's a laboratory portion. I got a guy up, my guy in Salem. We got up 2 in the morning. He came with me to Pelham usually Pelham's famous for its DUIs. They love, I don't know, they come from Lowell to Manchester through. It's a great place. DUI capital of Southern New Hampshire. And he was with me through, I would say, a dozen bails. We get a bail commissioner handbook, but the street enlarges that experience. That's all that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Sartek. And that is actually a very good point. And I did already have it in my notes for training. But I think also important is a continuing ed. We change the laws every year. I don't know how often these bail handbooks are updated. You can respond to that if you.
There is an attempt at continuing ed because every year we meet with our district court judge. But I have found inconsistencies because when you said we're short, I have, for the team, this is patting myself on the back. I have gone to Nashua. I have gone to Raymond. I have gone once to Somersworth. The only time I've been in Somersworth in my life because the police needed a bail commissioner. I did it for the team. So
How short would you say that you are in staffing?
I can tell you that Salem could use another. Salem, we do 3 towns. Salem could need at least 1 more, and the whole Derry, Nashua area. Someone else can speak to that, but I'll bet they can use at least 2 or 3, at least that number.
Mm-hmm. And it's really not a questioning of funding because these positions aren't funded by the court. They're basically at this point volunteer. Could you address how often you actually get reimbursed for your work?
I don't want to because I'm extraordinarily lucky. I have done the bails in Manchester and it's 50%. Because it's terrible. The people you see don't need incarceration. They need a hospital bed. And you're looking at this person. It's a life that's in front of you that's going down the drain. Yet you've got to do your job. It's a real conflict. I'm not a counselor, but I'm looking at a human being that's all right. I lose. Look, I didn't do it for the money. I'm a pensioner. I'm okay. But 2 out of 10, and I'm extraordinarily lucky.
Indeed. And I think that New Hampshire has a proud history of volunteer service in our government. None of us here are in it for the money. So I would say that the same probably applies for the bail commissioners. Having said that, there is an expense that they incur and an inconvenience they incur that we don't. No one's calling us to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and drive 50 miles to bail someone. So I think it's very important that we focus on making sure those folks are reimbursed and the training and also figuring out a way to bolster those numbers, because without the bail commissioners, our system would come to a screeching halt. Thank you for your input. Representative Muse.
Yes, I just wanted to say before we get going that sometimes the simplest and clearest solutions aren't necessarily solutions to the problem. And I think that's one of the things that we've struggled with a lot of these bills. They may be clear and simple solutions to a problem, but in some cases, they're the wrong solutions. There are constitutional issues with some of them. There are also issues related to what Representative Sytek raises. So what we don't want to be in is a position where we're further criminalizing mental health, and I think it's something that as we start down this path, I think that's one of the things that we really do need to try to specifically to avoid. And I do know that a lot of people have been looking over our shoulders. Every session I've been in the legislature, we've had to deal with bail bills. And a lot of the people who look over our shoulders are looking at it from a constitutional perspective. So we have a definite obligation to the people that we need to protect. But one of the things that we also have an obligation to do is to make sure that our criminal justice system functions fairly and effectively for people who are accused of crimes. So we actually are going to have a lot on our shoulders over the next few weeks. And as I said, sometimes the clearest and the simplest solutions are the wrong ones. So I think the challenge for this committee is to try to come up with solutions that are as clear and simple as we can make them, but that actually solve the problem. And one of the things I'm really happy to see, in the list that Representative Roy went through, is a legitimate attempt to address some of the systemic things that are really driving problems with the bail system. So I think we're off to a good start.
Thank you, Representative Muse. And I think as part of the things we need to discuss is we need to look at are people being held on crimes that even if convicted, they ultimately would not have to serve jail. It seems counterintuitive to me that someone would be held for a crime that even if convicted of it, there's no jail sentence. So that's one of the things we need to look at as well, which is why we're going to look at a list of crimes very carefully as far as who needs to see a judge and ensure that there's a judge readily available so that people aren't held for extended times. For example, if someone's arrested on a Friday, they shouldn't have to wait until Monday. A judge should be able to make a quick decision via a Zoom call, whether that person is a danger or not. And I feel like that will take some of the burden off the decision-making of the bail commissioners when they know that it's going to be looked at by someone else within a short period of time. Anyone else? Okay. So at this point, I think what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what we're going to do in the upcoming meetings so that people have kind of a feel for who, as far as people in the audience here in the gallery who may want to attend or may not want to attend. I think the first issue we'll be taking up tomorrow will be probably we're going to go over our list of crimes. I think that's where we'll start. I wanted to do IT, but I think I've got a date in October when the company that actually just did this it was one of the Carolinas. They just redid their entire court system. And that will be the date we'll take that up. And that'll give us time to get finance to come as well. So tomorrow, plan on looking at the lists of crimes that we're going to be discussing. I'll circulate this evening a draft proposal to the members, and we will discuss it tomorrow at the hearing and bring your thoughts on that. And then next Thursday, I think that we'll start with discussing the bail commissioners and how they are reimbursed, and we will invite someone from the court on that day. I am working on a meeting with the Chief Justice of the New Hampshire Supreme Court for myself and Representative Gathright to bring our proposals. The court can't tell us policy, but they can tell us whether our policy is workable or not. So we're going to kind of try and pick his brain and thread that needle as far as him telling us our policy and us imposing something on the court that just isn't workable or will clog the justice system. And we'll go further on our schedule after that. So those are the next 2 days, tomorrow and next Thursday. Is there anyone here in the audience that, is there a better word in the audience for this? Yes, President.
Before the audience, as a lark, I started to list the bails that I did.
Yeah.
I've done about 3,500 bails, and I have copybooks, which I'm willing to bring in. You might want to see what it actually looks like, how many personal recognizance, which is the overwhelming majority, what the crimes are. It just might be an interesting thing to thumb through. If anybody wants, I'll bring them in. You can take a look at them if you like.
I think that's a good idea because it's frankly probably the best information we could get because we couldn't go to the court and get it because the IT system is a mess. So thank you. Is there anyone here, Representative, would you like to address the committee? I see you're here probably for one of your bills. Sure, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say I really I think the points that you guys just laid out, the 3 points that you guys are going to work on as a committee, are fantastic. I talked to a lot of people around the state, officials and citizens, and the state is really looking for us to do something. And I'm hopeful after coming to this meeting this morning that something's going to be accomplished. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys come up with.
Thank you, Representative. And frankly, that was my point when I started framing this, is I looked back and I realized, as Representative Muse said, it seems like we're dealing with a bail issue every couple of years. We're back at bail. I feel like it's time to fix it once and for all. And instead of patching the holes, let's just rebuild the dam and do it right. And I think that would go far to help our citizens. I see a former bail commissioner. Would you like to address us at all? I know I probably put you on the spot, Trixie. But
My name is Trixie Lefebvre. I was a bail commissioner up until August 31st of this year when I resigned. At the time of my resignation, I was owed for 2022 and 2023 over $15,000. Most of my calls were to the Manchester Police Department. I feel as though there is a disconnect with the bail commissioner community and the payment process. I appreciate the fact that you are all on the right track with putting bail commissioners as part of your committee charge. And I do know that at one point in time, within the past 5 years, there were probably over 125 bail commissioners. And last I knew, we were down to about 85. So there does need to be a fix to the situation so that the state of New Hampshire can go back to where they were, which is to provide the service to the police departments so that the officers are not held inside the police departments and not able to patrol and keep the citizens safe. So I just appreciate all that. I will be continuing to attend because I was raised to think that I'm going to see it to the end. I've been here since 2019, and it would be nice to know that the bail commissioner community is being looked after. So thank you very much.
I thank you, and the institutional knowledge that you bring, we will definitely be using it over the course of the next 3 or 4 weeks.
Thanks.
So be prepared to have your brain picked.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Frank?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you, Celia, New Hampshire. I just really wanted to say I appreciate the time that this committee has put into this issue, has not been distracted by rhetoric, has been really dedicated to looking at what the facts are, looking at the law currently allows. And so I really appreciate that y'all are taking this very kind of thoughtful approach to this, and I hope that you all see us as a resource throughout this process. And yeah, we'll be here each week and appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no one else, anyone else on the committee want to say anything? Seeing none, I think that's all we really have for today. I apologize for the short meeting, but I felt like it was important to kind of set the groundwork on what we will be doing. Some of you may appreciate being able to leave quickly. Some of you maybe drove a long way and are angry with me. But I feel like we need to be prepared and not just, especially in light of the way that I'd like to go forward with this, one piece at a time. I want to give you all an opportunity to kind of prep for it so that when you come to the next meeting, you have some thoughts on it rather than having to come up with them off the cuff. Did you want to say something or no? Okay. With that, I see nothing further. Then I will see you all tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock and be prepared to discuss crimes that should or should not be bailable. I just want to note, I am going to try and reach out to the members of the Senate, our counterparts, and see if anyone would like to attend. What I don't want to do is have this committee spend a month working really hard to have it go to the other side of the bicameral chamber to have it tossed out. So I'd like their support, buy-in, input early on. I see this as a joint effort, not us versus them. And I feel like what fell apart this previous session was unfortunate, but out of it came something good. We're gonna instead of just passing that fix and moving on, we're going to look at the whole system. So I'll be reaching out to them this afternoon. Hopefully we'll be seeing some of them soon. With that, I close the hearing. See you tomorrow.